Right. So, with reference to inflation, I dealt right so far inflation word. Inflation means continuous rise in price. Continuous rise in price. Generally, continuous means it is a long period, right? More than 12 months. 12 months, right? So this is inflation. Okay. Next, one more word also we dealt it. Deflation is continuous decreasement in price, yes, named as deflation, right? So inflation, it is harmful to buyers, right? Deflation harmful to sellers. So we need to maintain balance, and we need to maintain protection not only for buyers but also sellers. So neither inflation nor deflation is existed. In such a way measures are taken. Why? Because inflation and deflation, when you excuse, leads to recession. Recession means falling down of economic activities. Falling down of economic activities. It was 2008 globally. If you do not control recession, leads to depression. Very severe problem. Depression. Here fell down of economic activities. Economic activities. This is the difference. It was 1929 30s globe faced. So inflation, deflation, very very dangerous words. But these to be eliminated as well as possible. Otherwise, we need to face considerable problems. So no government entertain these two problems. Okay, now move to another page. So it is understood that any country, right, doesn't matter. Okay, need to eliminate, right, inflation, deflation, right? Okay. Right. Then now one more point also I have to explain on this occasion, that price, as I told you, price rise, price down. Okay, price rise short period, long period. Price down short period, long period. Okay, so long period inflation now itself I dealt. long period deflation, and the meaning of long period also I mentioned above 1 year, short period below 1 year, below 1 year, isn't it? Right. So below 1 year, below 1 year. Okay. Whenever price rise seems exist below 1 year, the special word which we need to use that is inflationary gap. Gap means short period, and the price down seems in below 1 year, that is deflationary gap. So that's why here price maybe rise, maybe down, short period, short period. Here inflationary gap, deflationary gap. Okay, so these two words used by Mr. J.M. Keynes. Mr. J.M. Keynes. Okay, and inflationary gap is not at all a problem. Why? Because of course price rise taking place, in which sellers are very happy, sell more goods. There were production also instigated, production is increased. That's why it is not a leakage, it is incentive, according to Mr. J.M. Keynes. And buyers also, they are not facing any problem. Why? Because the price rise exists for a short period, doesn't matter, they can bear. On the same line here, price down taking place, right? So here buyers are very happy, they can buy more. So deflation gap not at all a leakage, but it is incentive. I think it is clear. So according to Mr. J.M. Keynes, so price rise means demand seems high, but Mr. Keynes dealt with macroeconomics, not microeconomics. So what is micro, what is macro, right, to be dealt in next page. Okay, we move into next page. Right. So according to Mr. J.M. Keynes, right, J.M. Keynes, 1929, that is already we experienced a problem, that is depression, isn't it? So before that, one formula was followed, that was supply creates demand. Supply creates demand. Supply creates demand. It means in market supply is very important. Just you increase the supply. It was explained by Mr. JB say. What he says, just you increase the supply. Okay, you increase supply. Demand automatically comes. You don't bother with the blood, demand comes automatically. So that's why producers increased the supply irrespective of demand. What happens here? When oversupply leads to price down. Okay, price down for a long period leads to depression. That was the wrong policy which was propounded by Mr. J.B. Say, who was a classical economist. So because of J.B. Say, globe faced depression. So after depression, Mr. Right, Keynes entered into the field. What he said, Not supply create demand, demand creates supply. He reverse the theory. Right, demand creates supply. It means demand is important. Buyers are important. Here sellers are important, buyers are important. So buyers are important. Demand is important. Demand creates. So you don't bother with the bloody supply, just supply comes automatically, just you increase the demand. So which is correct? Mr. JB said that supply creates demand. Mr. J.M. Keynes said that demand creates supply. Between these two, which seems correct? Okay, we have to decide. For example, when you visit a shop, in that shop they write, buyers are our gods. Buyers are our gods. You might have seen. Consumers are our gods. Means consumer buyer. Buyer means demand. Demand is important. Whenever buyers are present in the market, automatically supply comes automatically. Either within the state or neighboring state or neighboring country, doesn't matter, but goods come. So Keynes' concept is very seem near to the fact. That's why here Keynes became father of modern economics. And what he said, inflation is the problem, deflation is a problem, but inflation gap, deflation gap, not at all a problem. Right? Okay. So yes, one more point is there to be discussed here. We take another page. Right. 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 Okay. So here, Mr. Keynes concept. Right. So Marshall and Keynes. As I told you, market constitutes takers, givers, isn't it? Givers supply, they give goods and services, and takers demand, they give money. They give money to givers, givers give the goods to takers. These two opposite forces treated as market. For example, one buyer, one seller. Okay, it is microeconomics. Yes, explained by Mr. Marshall, father of microeconomics. Okay, this is microeconomics. But Mr. Keynes, explained not microeconomics, macro, total demand. All buyers are taken, not single buyer. So total demand named as aggregate demand, total supply, treated as aggregate supply. Aggregate means total. According to Mr. Keynes, we explained about short period, not long period. Whenever aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply, price up. Price is upped, then this is inflationary gap. Why? Because as I told you, right, is a theorem belongs to short period, not long periods. That is inflation gap. And his theorem belongs to total economy, not part of economy. So macroeconomics, that is aggregate demand. So whenever aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply, then it leads to inflation gap. And reverse, for example, whenever aggregate supply exceeds aggregate demand, then price reduced, price down. Deflationary gap. Inflationary gap, deflationary gap, two words are proposed by Mr. J.M. Keynes, as I told you. And aggregate means total. Total supply, total demand. I think it's clear. Right. So it is understood that. It is understood that. Aggregate demand, aggregate supply. The two words used by Mr. J.M. Keynes. Why? Because he developed macroeconomics. Mr. Marshall theorem belongs to microeconomics. Single demand, single supply. But here total demand, aggregate supply. I think it's clear. Yes. Just to get clarification, I opted to take another page. Okay. Right. So in markets, right, we have a demand and supply. We have a aggregate demand, aggregate supply. It belongs to long period. It belongs to short period. Right? So between these two, whenever demand exceeds supply, price rise upwards. Supply exceeds demand, price go down. This is inflation. This is deflation. Here, short period. Aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply. It is not inflation, inflationary gap. And aggregate supply greater than aggregate demand. It is deflationary gap. As I told you, these two words were used by Mr. J.M. Keynes. I think it's clear. Okay. So inflation danger, deflation also danger, but inflation gap, deflationary gap not dangerous. Why? Because they are existed for in short period. Short period we can bear. Inflation gap, inflationary gap can be borne by the buyers. Deflation gap can be borne by the sellers. I think it's clear. Yes. So one more word also, right, used by Mr. Keynes. Between demand and supply, right, Mr. Keynes gave priority for demand, that is demand side economics. As I told you before, to 1929-30, supply creates demand. That was supply side economics existed before 1929-30s, but since 1929-30s, Keynesian economy erupted, so he gave much importance to demand, that is demand side economics. Okay, that's why whenever aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply, inflation gap, also it is named as demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation. Okay, inflation occurred because of demand. Why? Because aggregate demand. I think it's clear. So here inflationary gap also named as, okay, demand pull inflation. So demand pull inflation used by Mr. J.M. Keynes, inflation gap used by Mr. J.M. Keynes, deflation gap used by Mr. J.M. Keynes. These are the terms which are used by Mr. J.M. Keynes. I think it's clear. Very nice. So, right. Anyhow, inflation is the problem. It is understood. Don't excuse inflation. In the inflation period, people face, especially buyers face untold hardships. they can't purchase anything. Okay, then whenever they don't purchase anything, their purchasing power parity go down. Okay, their standard of living has go down, their life expectancy go down. Okay, so very dangerous situation. That's why price rise should not be entertained. This is the right point which was explained by Mr. Yes, economically, right, economists, right? Okay, move, yes, another page. Okay, so right, with reference to right inflation, so far we dealt inflation, inflation gap, deflation gap, recession, depression. Okay, these were the words we explained. So next question which is erupted, that is how inflation is measured. Just a simple method just I am going to use. You see, for example, generally the price rise per goods is considered, right? I opted to give one chart to get clarification, to avoid confusion, right? And you will be right in comfortable position. You see here, economy, yes, is equals to goods. As I told you, the goods again classified into right consumer goods, dealt it in the national income, and rest right is capital goods, capital goods, capital goods. As I told you, right, consumer goods again classified into durable consumer goods, durable consumer goods, right? Okay, durable, right? Durable consumer goods, right? Okay, durable consumer goods. For example, last for 10 years, 8 years, television I gave right example. Then non-durable consumer goods, right? They lose their strength. Non-durable consumer goods, they lose their strength soon after use. For example, milk. Then semi-durable consumer goods, as which are right last for 2 to 3 years. Clothing, just best example. Shirt point. And services, as I told you, services, isn't it? Right. So capital goods, as I told you, goods which are giving direct indirect satisfaction, right, in the preceding classes. For example, if you wanted to write apply for group 2 APSC, you can submit Xerox copies, that is consumer goods. For Xerox copy given by the Xerox machine, that is capital goods. So Xerox machine giving indirect satisfaction, Xerox copy giving direct satisfaction, Xerox copy is a consumer good, Xerox machine is a capital good. I think this here. Yes. The capital goods again, machinery needed fuel, right, and machine. For example, riding on bike, fuel, petrol, that is in economic terms gross variable capital formation. Machine gross fixed capital formation. Already I dealt it right in the preceding class. I think it's clear. So if you take all the goods, price movements in inflation, that is wholesale price index. Here we take both consumer goods and capital goods, right, except services, isn't it? So wholesale price index, general price index is the index in which all goods are taken into consideration. Then we have to evaluate the price movements, whether prices are increasing or decreasing can be known. I think it's clear. So for example, if you wanted to take only consumer goods, that is CPI, not Communist Party of India, that is consumer price index. If you consider both consumer goods and capital goods, it is wholesale price index. That's why here you might have seen in the paper, generally they announce once in a month about consumer price index, nothing but here retail price index and also wholesale price index. So with the calculation of wholesale price index, right, it is right duty of the right MOSI, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. They calculate wholesale price index, and they consider not only consumer goods but also capital goods. The price movements are calculated. Whereas in the case of CPI, MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, they consider. So they consider only CPI, means consumer goods. I think it's here. So it is understood that inflation, general inflation, is measured for consumer goods and capital goods. If you take exclusively consumer goods, it is CPI. If you take consumer and capital goods, it is renamed as wholesale price index. I think it's clear. Yes. So it is understood that generally we can listen, right? We can hear the words, right, which are reflected in the newspapers. Wholesale price index increasing, decreasing. Consumer price index. Generally they don't use the word consumer price index. Retail price index, retail inflation they use. I think it's clear. Yes. So here two more words just we learnt. That is wholesale price index and consumer price index. Right. Okay. Next page we take.